ご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
Hey everyone, Kakarot 197 again. This time with mass production units that became better known as ace units, commander units, or however you want to label them. And in this first part, we'll be having a look at 5 machines from the 1-year war. First up, we have the Gyan. Mostly known as Mikuvei's personal unit, this machine was actually created to work in tandem with the Doms and the Rigdoms. The Gyan would engage the enemy in close combat, while the Doms provided long-range support. However, at around the same time, Zeonic's Gelgook was also completed. Given that it was a much more general-purpose machine with high performance to boot, the decision was quickly made to mass-produce the Gelgook rather than the Gyan. It is highly likely that the Gyan's focus on close combat, and hence lack of ranged beam weaponry, was due to Mikuvei, who was a very big fan of fencing. This would make the Gyan's mass production yet another thing ruined by Mikuvei. For anyone interested in what could have happened if the Gyan had been mass-produced instead of the Gelgook, I highly recommend the Girin's Greed games. In these, we get the Gyan equivalents of all of the Gelgook variants, such as the Gyan High Mobility type, the Gyan Cannon, the Gyan Marine, and so on. Next up, we have the Zeta. In Universal Century 0074, there was fierce competition going on between Zimod's Zeta and Zeonic's Zaku to become Zeon's first mass production unit. While the Zeta outclassed the Zaku in most aspects, this performance came with one deadly flaw. The Zeta's high-performance Jupiter engine was very prone to overheating and, as a result, blowing up. Because of this, Zeon went with the Zaku line, and the Zeta prototypes were mothballed for 5 years. In late Universal Century 0079, with the war now turning against Zeon, they dug up these prototypes, quickly overhauled 4 of them, and designated them as Zeon's new secret weapon, with Zeon ace Jean-Luc Duval becoming the figurehead of these machines. This plan failed, not just because the Federation quickly learned the truth behind the Zeta, but also because the brand new Saturn engine, that was also to be used in the Rigdom, wasn't able to fix the Zeta's fatal flaw, resulting in the loss of one of the 4 overhauled Zetas during testing. Despite this, the 3 remaining Zetas and their pilots fought admirably, with 2 of them surviving the 1-year war. Duval's unit unfortunately also overheated. But the Zeta's legacy doesn't end there. After the 1-year war, the Zeta's reputation as a high-performance machine proved enough to continue upgrading to attempt to fix the engine problem. This was finally achieved in the form of the Zeta F, a combination of the Zeta with various parts of the Gyan, including stronger engine limiters. And this time around, they managed to do the job. Then, the Zaku 2 High Mobility type. Developed in order to modernize Zeon's space fleet, it first saw the day of light as the Zaku 2 High Mobility test type. 2 units were constructed, and the units were given a positive appraisal by Zeon ace pilot Elliot Rem. Development continued and resulted in the Zaku 2 High Mobility test type R1. Upgrades included extra thrusters and larger fuel capacity. 22 of these new test types were produced and handed out to various ace pilots such as Shin Matsunaga for evaluation. Again, some modifications were made, minor engine problems were resolved, and fuel tanks were replaced by fuel cartridges for faster reloading. This Zaku 2 High Mobility Type R1A was then meant to become the Zeon Space Force's main mobile suit. Despite being incredibly popular with their pilots, production was cut short after only 56 units, with an additional 10 that were upgraded from the R1 test type. The high-performance, high-mobility type was simply too much to handle for new pilots. Combine this with high production costs, and production was quickly halted. While Zeon's aces were trying their hardest to get their hands on one of these coveted machines, the high-mobility type's engineers weren't ready to throw in the towel just yet, and they continued development, resulting in the Zaku 2 High Mobility Type R2. While the R2 looks visually similar to its predecessors, the internals had been completely overhauled with various parts that would also be used in the Gelgook. This resulted in arguably one of the most powerful non-beam weapon compatible machines. Its performance was even set to rival that of the Gelgook. However, it still suffered from the same issues as the R1A. high production costs and difficult to pilot, causing Zeon to go with the Rig Dom as a stopgap machine until the Gelgoog could enter full mass production. 4 R2s would be constructed, 3 of which were used in combat by some of Zeon's best aces, Johnny Ryden, Robert Gilliam, and Gabby Hazard. If you want to know more about them, I also did a video on Zeon's top 8 aces. Up next, we have something that is most definitely not a Zaku, the Gouf. Made famous by one of Zeon's most beloved aces, the Gouf was originally intended as a replacement for the aging Zaku 2 ground type. With the Federation now deploying its own mobile suits, deployment of a close combat unit seemed like a given for Zeon. Despite this, the Gouf's production would soon be halted in favor of the high-speed Dom, which also proved to be much more cost-effective than the Gouf. After this, the Gouf would be mainly requested by ace pilots who preferred the nimble Gouf over the heavy, yet quick Dom. In fact, it proved so popular that an upgraded variant, the Gouf Custom, was introduced after Dom had already entered full-scale production. Other than being an overall improved version of the regular Gouf, it also featured a complete redesign of the weapons. The bulky heat rod now became a much longer electric wire with a magnetic grappling hook at its tip, allowing for much longer ranges and versatility in battle. The 5-fingered machine gun hand was now replaced with a regular hand, and a 3-barrel machine gun was mounted on the arm. This setup allowed for much greater ammo capacity and also increased compatibility with handheld weapons. The Gouf Custom would be exclusively used by aces such as Norris Packard or Lou Rower, second in command of the Midnight Fenrir Corps. Finally, we have the Efreet. Designed as a high-performance close combat mobile suit, the Efreet would suffer a similar fate as its main rival, the Gouf. Only 8 units of the deadly Efreet would be produced before it was decided to shift all production to the brand new Dom. These 8 existing Efreets were then distributed to various ace pilots who often customized them to their liking, making the Efreet known as an ace unit rather than a cancelled mass production unit. The most famous and most radical customized unit was the exam-equipped Efreet Custom piloted by Nimbus Sturzen. A double grenade launcher was added to each arm, the legs were fitted with extra thrusters, armor, and missile launchers, and the unit used 2 heat swords instead of just 1. However, the biggest change was undoubtedly the exam system, a system that allowed a pilot to perform on par with a new type. Other known custom units are the Efreet Nacht and the Efreet Schneid. So, if you were a pilot during the 1-year war, which one of these would you want to pilot? And if you think that I forgot about an important one, leave that down in the comments as well. If you enjoy my content, leave a like, subscribe, or consider supporting the channel through either Patreon Blades if you want some high quality Razor Blades, or Patreon. And that's all for this video, and I'll see you all next time, when we have a look at 5 more mass-produced units turned aces from the post-1-year war era.